Hello everybody and welcome back to Strategy Guide Reviews. My name is Blake Grunman and at long last I'm back with another guide review for you. Now you may notice I've got some new surroundings here. I've actually just relocated to home in Michigan. So this is a new studio, I guess you would say. Well, it's a new office at least. But actually I'm pretty excited to be able to record my first video review from here on site. And so like I mentioned before, we have a new guide review and this time it is for Destiny 2. Of course, it's going to be me picking up the Destiny review. I couldn't not. So fortunately, Carrie was able to set me up with this rather well put together guide that I kind of wanted to go through. Now, when I say well put together, that's with a couple of caveats, and I'll kind of get to that in a minute. But first, I just kind of wanted to go through the general overview. So first, you see we've got this really neat looking slip cover. I know it's a little hard to tell with the reflections going on here, but it's actually really cool. Now, one of the interesting things is if you remove the slip cover, first of all, it's got some really cool, nice inner insert art going on there, which is pretty neat. Now, the other side of the coin is if you look at the actual inside cover, you have a Titan. Now, in the case of this Destiny guide, what makes this interesting is that there's actually 3 different variations of the guide. Now, you can get your Titan, your Warlock, or your Hunter, and all 3 of those are random. So, very much like the game Destiny, what you get for your reviews are very random, and what you get for your copy of the game is also random. Fortunately, I got Titan Master Race for life. I am all about the Titan, so it actually just kind of worked out for me. Now that's actually my primary character class. But so to get into the actual review itself, the one thing I did want to mention first of all is, holy moly, some of this full-paged art is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful, and I think they've done a great job of showcasing that throughout the book. They do a really great job of just kind of not only showing you the art, but also kind of introducing you to the world of Destiny. Now, the one thing about this is it's really perfect for the kindergarten, somebody who's just new to the world of Destiny. It's perfect for that person in your life, somebody who doesn't really have a whole lot of experience with the game. Now, one of the things that was kind of established in the first game is once you figured this out, you know what you're doing. So this is primarily targeted towards that audience, people who haven't really played the game early on. And in that respect, it actually does a fairly good job kind of getting people up to speed. So early on, as you might expect, you have things such as your field manual where you're going in and they're explaining to you your key skills, abilities, buffs, armors, supers, things like that. And then they also go through and explain the different types of effects. So you have your void effects, your striker, your arc abilities, your gunslinger, arc strider, and for each individual class, and the void, arc, and solar powered classes that go along with those. So I mean, they do a good job of kind of spelling all this out and also breaking it down by each class and what you get as you upgrade your skill sets. So this is kind of essential for people who are new to the Destiny world. However, for anybody who's actually played the game before, the original Destiny, this is not new. This is very much the same stuff that you were dealing with in the first game. So in many cases, it's not really going to offer anything new for you. Now, that said, there are a few variations to the rule, things that they do have, such as the vendors, and the fact that they have different class-based vendors and also different location-based vendors. Now, they do a good job of kind of breaking down where these locations are throughout the game, and also the fact that when you get to endgame, that they aren't always where they originally started at on the farm. Now, what makes this interesting is this is really the only time that they make any kind of reference to endgame. And again, I'll kind of loop back around to that later on. Now, one of the things I did want to call out first and foremost is in the campaign sections, I really like what they did here. So what you see is you have a breakdown of all of the different items that are going into this mission. You have essentially your base walkthrough of all of the different maps. You then also have your enemies that are going to be showing up, and then the objectives. And here's what I really like. Over in here, it may be hard to see, but what that is it says new actions to learn. So again, this is kind of keying on that whole, hey, this is great for kindergartens type thing. It actually goes through and it calls out key skills that you need to learn or that you need to perfect in order to be successful on these missions. So in this case, it's aiming down the sights, throwing grenades, meleeing, attacking, sprinting, jumping, and weapon-based classes and types. These are different things that each mission has that you want to be able to do proficiently in order to succeed in said mission. Now, it's really cool that they do that, and also they do an awesome job of utilizing maps throughout. So as you're working your way through, you can see that, hey, there's another map down there in the corner. It breaks down the tower hangar portion of it. Then you move on and it's like, okay, so here's the Tower Plaza. Again, another map. And then it kind of goes through and explains everything in full detail. And each section, you have the new actions to learn. And I think that that's a really neat way of kind of trying to dip people's toe into the water. And along those same lines, it also shows you, all right, so here are your base objectives in this portion of the mission. And it really does a good job of kind of also highlighting, all right, so here's what's going to happen when you're going through waves and waves of enemies. All right, so the first wave will be, there'll be 9 legionaries. Then the second wave will be 15 legionaries. And the third will be a final assault that consists of another 15 legionaries of various skills and whether or not they may be of type super, things like that. And then another thing is you will also see that they do have these little gray callouts at different points throughout. And these are also doing their best to kind of talk about the finer points of the gameplay, the quirks that you might not necessarily find up front when you're playing the game, but they're things that would be good for people to learn that you would kind of only learn through experience later on in the game. So dropping while jumping. So while learning the finer points of your movements, you may find that your second jump sends you floating across chambers. So what you can do is instead, you can wait until you start dropping before you execute your second jump in order to be able to more effectively maneuver in the air. These are the kinds of things that you would only get after playing through the game quite a bit or playing through the original Destiny. So in that respect, it's actually a really solidly put together thing. Another element that it does is you can see that there are these red callouts as well. These are more mission specific things like, hey, these are things you need to be aware of. And talking about things like, all right, so the bullet spread and precision kills. So if you fire down the sights for long extended periods of time, you're going to have your bullet spread, as opposed to if you do in quick bursts, you're going to have precision kills. These are just kind of key things to kind of break down as you're going through the game. And again, those of us who have played it, we understand these things. But for people who are new to it, these are very important skills to master. And it does this through the entire campaign. It actually does a fantastic job of kind of working everybody through the different skill sets. And overall, the guide itself and the information it lays out there, it's very solidly put together. I was very impressed with this, and it seemed very comprehensive. It really did. And especially when you get into the sections with the boss battles, the kind of strategies that it's giving you, it offers up strategies for both if you're playing it in single player or if you're playing it in a party with other people and how it can be approached differently. So that, I did not expect that to happen, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that kind of an approach instead of it just being solely focused on how you would approach it in a single player type setup. Now, when you move on later on, you can see the portion that is dedicated to the Vanguard strikes. Now, with this, it is more point A to point B, a literal walkthrough, because these are solely multiplayer playable missions, and it is very much focused on, all right, so getting point A to point B, here's what you're going to do, here are the 5 different enemies that are going to show up, and once again, liberal usage of screenshots and maps throughout. And that's the one thing that I was very pleased with in this guide. Above anything else is they use lots and lots of maps, and they use it effectively. And the way that it's all laid out, it reads in a very linear fashion. So you don't have any problems with the organization of it. It's very easy to follow. And in that respect, I really do think that both the Vanguard Strike portion of the guide and the actual campaign walkthroughs are really, really awesome. Now, moving on to my favorite portion is the section on the Crucible. Now, spoiler alert, I really love Destiny multiplayer. I really love their competitive PvP multiplayer. And one thing that I found that was very interesting is they do have breakdowns of every single map, like such. Now, what makes it interesting is that as you open it up, you can see that they have different heat maps depending upon the types of matches. Now, it's the same overhead map, but the heat maps are laid out differently because they want to call out different key points that will be key positions on the map depending upon your match type. So if you're playing in Supremacy, you'll need to worry about these key points. If you're playing in Control, you'll need to worry about these. And they break down all of these locations and why they are significant to you while you're playing through it. So it was a nice touch, because I mean, a lot of times you'll just see them kind of go, all right, here's the map, here are some of the key positions, blah, and just kind of data diarrhea out there for you. Where with this, they're literally breaking it down by match type to let you know, here are the key positions, here's what you're working on, and in that respect, they did a really good job. Now, one of the interesting things is, and this is also true for the PlayStation exclusive Strike and for the PlayStation exclusive multiplayer maps, they're not covered in the book. Now, of course, because that's all PlayStation exclusive content, they probably didn't want to put it in the book for people that are on Xbox. Now, that is available via the e-guide, which once again, I will be looping back around to later. But again, the Crucible portion of the guide is my favorite part, and I think it's, honestly, I think it's where you're going to get the majority of your value if you're trying to play it. And it'll offer up some useful team tactics as well, depending upon your map position and how you want to play an individual map type. So I really like that. Now, the next portion, and this was where things started to get a little bit murkier. This is the director portion. Now, what you'll see is each director portion of the map is you'll see a gigantic big map laid out here. And then you will have key positions pointed out on the key in here with different icons. Now with that, you can then see that they will have the specific call outs of what everything is. Here's where enemy clusters are. Here's where the campaign mission takes place. Here's your landing zone. Here are your key positions. And in many respects, I think that this was an interesting approach. The problem is it reads a lot like I mentioned before, like data diarrhea. You've just got this big splat of data. It's really kind of hard to follow and structure. Plus, you have your maps on one screen, or on one page. You then will have your breakdowns that will roll on for a couple of pages worth of things. So you're doing a lot of flipping back and forth. Makes it a little bit difficult to follow. Now, what's also interesting is you'll see things like the callouts for adventures that are taking place, for planet-based quests that are going on. And I looked everywhere and I couldn't find it. Couldn't find it anywhere in this book. They're specifically called out on the maps, but there's nothing in the actual text that gives you a breakdown aside from just like a general synopsis of what that mission is, which I found really disappointing. But then I saw down in the corner where it says, hey, you should be taking a look at the e-guide. So when I decided to do that, that's where things started to get a little more interesting. So when I did that, what I found is they actually do have really well put together breakdowns of all of the adventure side quests, all of the planet-based quests, and also the exclusive PlayStation content. That's all part of the e-guide. It is not in the book. The book tells you to go to the e-guide in order to get it. So if there was some scenario where you happen to either buy the book secondhand or somehow you got one that didn't have the code bundled with it for the e-guide, you're screwed. Half of the content that you actually want to be able to get in your guide, the actual the quest lines and the adventures, which are, by the way, things that recycle on every daily cycle and sometimes every weekly cycle. These things that you're going to be playing over and over again, there's no commentary on it in the book itself. You have to go to the online guide. So imagine if you're trying to actually use this guide while you're playing the game. You're trying to play a game that's persistently online, so you're already trying to stay on top of things because you can't really hide without dying. There's no such thing as pausing the game. So I then look it up in the guide here and I say, oh, okay, so I need to go to the next step in this adventure. Oh, wait a minute, that's on the e-guide, so I got to go grab my tablet, pull my tablet up, and then I need to pull this up to get the walkthrough of the adventure. That's just not convenient. I mean, why bother having the book if it's going to force you to try to use the e-guide? Now, if this was exclusively just an e-guide, then that would make plenty of sense. And I guess the argument could be made that, hey, it's synergy between the e-guide and the written version of the guide. But at the same time, I'm sitting here going, put it in one or the other. Pick one. Don't just make me split back and forth. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And maybe they were trying to do that because maybe when they were writing the guide, these missions weren't finished yet, or because these were things that were more fluid and they would be changing on the fly. I don't know, but I didn't get any indication that that the e-guide had been updated since launch. And also I didn't really get any indication that there was any reason why they couldn't have been included in the book. So the director portion, I mean, I really like some of the things that they did, and I'm going to kind of pull up my cheat sheet here. So like I said, it was kind of hard to follow with all the positions on the map. And now I will say that it does have really good descriptions of the key locations on the map. And it would say, oh, hey, here's where you're going to find pockets of enemies, or here's a position where you're going to have a nice overlook. But the interesting thing is they offer up all these key positions, but they never say why they are key positions. It's like, oh, yes, this will be a hallway. Yeah, it's a hallway. I get it. But why is this an important hallway? It doesn't call any of that out. It's almost like they're just kind of, it's implied that you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out when you get there. No, that's your job. Explain to me why this is important, why this position is significant. And I didn't really do a good job of kind of breaking that down. So here's an example of a specific location. This is a portal. Inaccessible unless a mission is active. A portal at the end of the forest floor section deposits you in the final location of the dark forest. What does that even mean? In the context of what I'm playing, that makes no sense. And other than it saying, well, it takes you from point A to point B, why is this important? Why are you calling this out to me? It really just didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Now, one of the things I do like, and this is one thing that I do think was kind of cool, is if you do look, you can kind of see that, where is it? Right over here. You can see the little pie chart. If you get in close, you can see that it's split up by different colors. So you've got part blue, part red. That's because it gives you a breakdown of the concentration of different enemy types. So you'll find that the blue portion was the Fallen portion, and the red portion is the Cabal. You can use this at a quick glance to be able to tell what factions you're going to be going up against. And when they're also talking about the pockets of enemies, this is especially helpful when you're doing, say, some of the quest line, or I'm sorry, not some of the quest lines, some of the daily missions, where it'll be like, hey, we want you to go clear out X number of Cabal. All right, so what do? I look in here. All right, so here's where I can find a pocket of Cabal, so then I can go and kind of clear those out. I found that to be very helpful when I was doing those patrol missions. Now, they also don't do a whole lot of explaining what the actual patrols are. Once again, go to the e-guide, because we'll give you a breakdown of all that. It's just like, they're so close. They've got a lot of neat things that they're doing here, and things that would be very helpful to people that are new to the series. But the fact that they have you bouncing back and forth between the two, the e-guide and the actual written version of the guide, it just kind of leaves me with a bad taste in my mouth. It makes me feel like what I have here physically in my hands is not the complete work. It's not everything that I need to know, which is when I buy the guide, I'm buying a bound book that tells me how to play the game and why certain things are important. And it really doesn't do a good job of keeping me in one place. And it's very disappointing that they chose to do that. Now, along those same lines, they do have a couple of things that they also seem to have left out in the guide. And one of the things, if you've been familiar with Destiny at all, one of the biggest things and the most important parts about the game is the end game. And this is everything that you're going to do after you finish the campaign. Grinding for light levels, being able to set up for the raid, being able to have good gear combinations. They don't do anything for talking about anything outside of your standard exotic weapons. They don't talk about potential loadouts. They don't do anything to talk about the end game grind and how to min-max through trying to get your loot, or trying to get your use the loot system and use the light system to do infusions to get your gear up to the best levels. They don't talk about any of that stuff. And this is what the game is once you finish the campaign. This is what the important part of the game is, really, after your first week. And so the fact that that isn't there, that's a really, really notable problem. It really is. And this is something that really kind of it really didn't sit well with me. Along the same lines, there's no talk of the raid. Nothing whatsoever. Nothing on the e-guide or in the book. This is arguably the best and most important content in the game, and there's no talk of it at all. Like, this is the stuff that would have been probably the most beneficial, especially for newcomers, to be able to have that kind of information there, and it's just gone. It's nowhere to be found. So, I mean, there are these big key gaps of information where I think that these would be critical, the critical things for people that are new to this series. And even me, I've played the series, and coming into the raid, that's an intimidating thing to try to do. And maybe, again, this is another case where, hey, it came in after the fact, or it wasn't finished when they were working on the guide. Well, then put it in the e-guide. You guys have been pushing me towards reading this e-guide this entire time that I've been playing the game. So why wouldn't you have updated it to include that content? I mean, I've beat this drum before, but what good is an e-guide if you're not going to go in and make it a living document? If you're not going to go through and keep it updated? If you're not going to try to stay on top of things when patches come down the line? These are the different things that would make your product worthwhile. And so, yes, it's accurate at launch, but a few patches in, there could be things in here and key bits of information that are just no longer valid. Along those same lines, the fact that they focused only on exotics in here was really disappointing, because you have so many weapons in the Destiny arsenal, and the fact that you're just choosing to focus on just the exotics, while yes, I understand that those are your most important things, but talk about how I can do different loadouts, how I can do different combinations of weapons. The one exception to the rule is the MIDI multi-tool and the MIDI mini-tool, the MIDI multi-tool, blah, 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 and the MIDI mini-tool, which it does talk about how those weapons can be used in tandem. Outside of that, though, there's nothing. Absolutely nothing. They don't talk about potential gear loadouts that you'd want to have. They don't talk about, hey, here's how you can use your armor and your weapons to compensate for each other. Here's how you can use your void weapons well in certain scenarios. They don't really do anything along those lines, which is really kind of disappointing. And I guess the fact that it leaned so heavily on the e-guide is what really it just did not sit well with me in a lot of the times. So overall, I mean, the guide, it's a very well put together book for the actual content that is in the book. It really is. The guide for the campaign and for the strikes, very solid. I mean, I have no complaints about it, and it's perfect for people who are new to the series. I have no complaints about that. Now, the problem is that the majority of the content that you're going to be replaying, that you're going to be coming back to time and time again, it sends you off to the e-guide. It's, they couldn't be troubled to put it in the book. And that was a very poor decision from where I'm sitting. If you've got to bounce back and forth between your tablet and your book, there's something wrong with the way that you've structured your book. So with that in mind, I'm going to have to give Destiny 2's strategy guide a very disappointing 3 out of 5. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.